Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Jose and TIA for the invitation again. Last time, I was virtual, and it's always good to be in person and specifically without a mask. And thanks, Dilip, for giving the, insights and recommendations for keeping a healthy life of eating, small portions, which I do, eating smaller portions of sweet, which I really don't do. But one thing I compensate by is, doing my everyday, 45 minutes to an hour of running. So, I represent, Trias. Trias means Trinity or three, where we try to sort of get the clinician, the patient, connected through technology or, the AI. And I'll briefly talk about, precision medicine today. Dilip talked about precise medicine. But an extension of that is to see how one can sort of precise an individual, patient's genomics to provide, the best of, care. Here or? Okay. Sorry, go. Okay. So Trias, as we call, is a, new age, clinical platform. So, there are many platforms which sort of enables a doctor or a clinician, in a setup as a single doctor clinic or a hospital to run their practice, digitally. And we've sort of studied various platforms which are both in India as well as, globally, but that there are certain fundamentals that we firmly believe that are missing and that is really, really needed to achieve great, clinical outcomes. First is to really make the data entry as easy as possible for the clinician. The second one is to store them in a very, very structured format so that they're able to sort of be usable, and then to use those data for meaningful interpretations. And the other aspect that we've sort of focused on is to make it much more compelling rather than one size fits all, but to keep it focused on a particular specialty, because every specialty is unique in itself in terms of the offering of medical intervention. And today I would be speaking about one of those specialty which you are quite excited about, and how we are sort of doing those things with collaborations. So precision medicine essentially is a very, very emerging practice, done quite extensively in countries like Israel, but even in the West. A lot of innovations are sort of coming in, but essentially it is to drive treatment of diseases by understanding an individual's genetic profile. And the more detail you sort of get, it sort of becomes as complex as possible. And that's where, how do you sort of ensure that to meet these requirements, what is the important aspect? And to us, and for all of the researchers and clinicians, data becomes the most important element. And unfortunately or fortunately, we have data, but then mostly in a very unstructured format. Have data, but then they are part of the story. So how do we sort of essentially build a precision medicine or a personalized medicine as we call it, by enabling systems to capture those right kind of data? First is to have the systems to easily be able to collate those data. Secondly, to have it stored in a very, very structured format. And then finally, to drive AI models and data modeling to intelligently analyze them and then provide the right kind of insights. And like I mentioned, EHR, or the hospital management system, is the first point of contact of getting the conversation from the patient from the doctor into a digital format. While there are multiple platforms, like I said, it becomes very, very critical to drive innovation at the core of healthcare, which essentially is a platform such as EHR. And what we have tried to do is to drive a whole lot of innovation and driving a lot of AI interventions within a setup as an EHR, so that aspects such as collation of data, augmentation of data, and representation of that becomes much more easier and compelling. So some of the specialties that we are working upon largely focused on mental health and women and child. And oncology is another sphere that we are working on, which is in progress. But today I would like to focus our attention and our thought process on infertility. Why infertility? Because that's sort of a growing, very, very fast growing, market at this point in time. The need is very, very high. Statistics say that 1 out of 6 couples sort of go through challenges such as unable to, conceive. Second is the cost of intervention is very, very high. Conversion rate is low in the sense that if one needs to go through an IVF cycle, it's an average 3 cycles that an individual go through before they actually conceive, and that's where precision medicine sort of enables them to sort of get that average much lower. So right at the first start, you're able to sort of get the conversion. And last but not the least is the data privacy. Just to give a glimpse about the IVF process, and I'm not going to talk much in detail, but at a very high level, this entire cycle is just a 21 days process of having to provide the right kind of hormones and medications for the oocytes or the female egg to sort of grow to a particular size, monitoring them for about 6 to 8 days. And then you sort of have the aspect of fertilization of taking the male egg and then the female egg and having that fertilized. And then another 5 to 7 days to monitor the entire growth of the embryo. And then finally, having that transferred back into the system. And while it is just a 21 days, process, but in the amount of data, the amount of nitty-gritties of the medications, the way the hormones are sort of, getting represented is really, really, mind-boggling. Ultimately, what we said was, if we have to provide a solution which is not only enabling the clinician to manage their practice and take the data, but really move to the next step about how can we ensure that we are able to manage the genomics and bioinformatics, as well as the bibliometrics, which is basically tons of data that is available, for example, in the internet, to sort of curate them and get them together and finally provide the right kind of reports. And so we have sort of collaborated with a company called 23 Strands, and they are in Australia. And we are quite gung-ho about this collaboration because really both the products sort of fit absolutely good. And then we've had a couple of pilots in both the countries sort of going on, where the clients are very, very excited about how this can really increase the conversion rate of the IVF cycles. Now, what we try to do is to sort of take the phenotype data as well as the genetic data. Our system sort of collects all of the phenotype data in terms of the height, weight, and so on and so forth, which is largely the reference data that is sort of gets used for treatment. But here we have where we look at the whole genome sequencing. And if you look at the the entire structure of the human body, it has 3 billion pairs of DNA. And whenever I see this slide, one of the verses from the Holy Scriptures that come to my mind is that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. The more detail you go into the depth of the human sciences, it's really amazing, and how sort of getting into those data will really benefit in terms of getting healthier and better outcomes. Typically in the current world, not only in India but across, most of the genetic tests are done on whole exome, which essentially captures just about 2% of the base pairs, but the whole genome takes care of the entire 3 billion. And just to give a size of the data that we are sort of looking at, for a particular patient, the entire data goes to about 300 GB data. And that's the size of data that one needs to sort of use to really drive this kind of outcomes. And again, from a future perspective, we connect the clinician, the specialty, the fertility specialist, the patient, to drive a very, very seamless process, ultimately providing the right kind of treatment, which are very, very specific and personalized to each client. Some of the questions that really get answered are aspects such as why the issues sort of happen. And it is not only about issues on one gender, but really on both the sides, both in terms of the male as well as on the female side. And more importantly, how can we sort of provide the right kind of insights, because most of the reasons currently are idiopathic, which means unknown, but using the whole genome sequencing, you really get very precise reasons and precise, analysis to provide the right kind of medication and right kind of, insights to get the, outcome. And ultimately, what is the outcome? You're able to predict, you're able to, prevent, and ultimately provide the right kind of, prognosis for, for this kind of a thing. And again, from our perspective, like I said, it's just one specialty, but surely enough, moving into cancer and a whole lot of other areas is really, compelling, and we are quite, excited about that. I would like to just give a glimpse about our platform. There are various modules, but I talked about the ease of capturing the data and how our virtual assistant helps the doctor without even having to touch the screen, being able to capture the data. If you can just play the video. Left hand side, if you have the play card, bottom left. Yeah, yeah.
Book an appointment. Use phone number or name to search for a patient and book a new appointment within seconds.
New appointment.
Start encounter. Trias provides a one-page summary for each patient so you get the full view of the patient medical records in one place. Chief complaint.
Listening.
Chest tightness and pain. Full stop. Wheezing when exhaling. Full stop. Trouble sleeping caused by shortness of breath, coughing and wheezing. History.
Listening.
No travel, no smoking, father is asthmatic. Allergy.
Listening.
No known allergy. Diagnosis.
Listening.
Suspected asthma. Drugs.
Listening.
Tiotropium bromide twice a day after food for 2 weeks. Next line. Mepolizumab once a week for a month. Investigations.
Listening.
X-ray, spirometry and exhale nitric oxide test. You can use pre-documented templates for easier documentation. Show favorites. You can choose from a list of saved templates and load the information instantly. Save encounter.
Saving encounter.
Print prescription. The RX is printed based on the features selected and entered by the doctor. Contact us for demo and more details.
So pretty intuitive and easy for a doctor to sort of capture, and more importantly in a very, very structured format which can then be used on a later basis. And like Jose was mentioning, we're quite open for a lot of collaborations. We've done collaborations because ultimately to build the right kind of outcomes, we need that collaboration where we can drive it together. And there are a lot of innovations that's going on, and feel free to reach out to us so that we can see how together we can drive a healthier tomorrow. And thank you. Thanks, Jose, for inviting us.